All right, everyone. Kamala Harris has decided to drop out of the presidential race. She's trying to do the bravado thing, like, oh, well, don't worry, Trump. I'll see you at your trial, which will never happen. This was predictable for some time. Kamala Harris had spiked months ago after the first debate. She never really regained that footing, and some people are saying Tulsi Gabbard is the reason she's gone. Much as I admire Gabbard being the only fucking person in the Democratic field willing to call Kamala out on her bullshit, which is what her entire thing is. She's tried to do that to Warren. The DNC won't let her, by the way. At the debates, they constantly muzzle her if she mentions Elizabeth Warren at all. Much as though I admire that spunk that Gabbard had towards her, that really wasn't the reason. She was already, for several weeks prior, beginning to collapse in the polls. Because what happened is she never built a coalition. She spikes because there's an element of voters within the Dem field, and there still is, that are trying to find a candidate. They don't want Biden. They're not sold on him. They're not sold on leftism. These are swing voters that are looking for someone to back, and Kamala Harris seemed for a moment electable because she simply seemed like the only one who was really good at debating, but that was only true in one debate. In the subsequent two debates, she flubbed completely. So she had already gone back down. She was in the single digits, technically viable. She spent several months at that sort of borderline between 4 and 6 points. Buttigieg knocked her out of the top 4, and then the rest was history. The thing is, Kamala Harris's campaign uniquely couldn't survive because it needed big donors. She's not a grassroots kind of populistic individual. She's not Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders can take $3 from little old granny who is demented enough to think that he's actually going to give her free shit, and stuff from college kids who will chip in $2 because, they can go without ramen soup for a night to support Bernie Sanders. He can run a shoestring-style campaign in some states, focus on others, run the grassroots field. People like Trump, he's an incumbent, big money name. Somebody like Biden, big name. They can get those big donors from the corporate side of their parties reliably, and then Trump is independently wealthy. Bloomberg as well, some of the other candidates. But Kamala Harris never had any of these advantages. Warren had set herself up with tens of millions in corporate cash so she could pretend to be grassroots in this election. Kamala didn't have that. Buttigieg was highly charismatic, has consistently done fairly well, at least in every debate. Kamala never did that. She's the square peg for a round hole. She was the candidate that never quite fit in. Am I glad that she's gone? Oh, absolutely. It would have been a disaster if she had been the nominee. The Democrats probably would have managed to lose California if she had been the nominee. You've got to understand, my unique perspective as a more libertarian individual on Kamala is she's probably one of the most authoritarian people that was within the field. Bloomberg aside, she was the gadfly, overzealous prosecutor. She is the face of the PTA meeting other than Warren. She's the most bland, cloying, PC, kinda sorta far-left individual within the field, never fit in. Talking about smoking weed, listening to Tupac before Tupac existed as a rap artist, putting people in prison for extended periods for mere drug possession while pretending to be a reformist. She's just a chronic liar, and it is funny because her fans, as recently as a couple days ago, would constantly crucify me. I'd chime in on Twitter on Kamala Harris, whatever the hell she was posting, and say, ha ha ha, Kamala Harris will not be nominee, she sucks. She's dying in the polls. Gabbard at some point is going to supplant her, and Gabbard's probably going to drop out fairly soon too. She's just waiting long enough to say, ha ha, I outlasted Kamala. She knows she's not viable. It's just something that people do. She's digging into Kamala's face a little bit. I support that, by the way. And they would say, no, Kamala's going to eat orange drumfler alive. Kamala's going, Yas Queen Slay, she's going to be the princess of the United States. She's such a wonderful person. And the din of that sort of fervor died down very quickly for most people because she had a lot of soft support. But the thing is, there were always a handful of people who still believed in her bullshit. And it is bullshit. Kamala Harris never had a chance. Even when she was peaking, I said she never had a chance. Of course, Clinton looked at her and said, well, you get this 50-something female neoliberal who pretends to be far left on some issues. Yeah, maybe I can get behind that. But it was never going to happen because Elizabeth Warren exists. Elizabeth Warren has always been ahead of Kamala. There's never been any reason for Kamala Harris to surge. She did because, literally, the only reason you know who Kamala Harris is, and she's not another Stayer or Bloomberg within the race that nobody fucking cares about in the first place, is because of one good debate performance. And this has happened before. You have a good debate performance. Christie had his moment at the debates. He rises up by a few points, looks viable briefly. Oh, it's going to be President Chris Christie. People get behind these people, and they have unrealistic expectations of their abilities. I don't even know whether Buttigieg is going to make it. Buttigieg is surging right now. His peak is beginning to look precipitous. If it's too sharp a peak and he doesn't build a coalition of voters behind him, he was running at 7, maybe 6 points, technically viable and ahead of where Kamala was when she peaked. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that he makes it. He could have the same problem. A month from now, we could be talking about Buttigieg dropping out of the race and why the Democrats are doomed in 2020, which, by the way, at that point, they probably would be. Biden, I mean, if ever there was a face to put to the definition of limping to the finish line, it would be Joe Biden right now. Warren, she doesn't pass the smell test anymore. She's arguably fallen to third. Bernie Sanders, a 78-fucking-year-old socialist, is now in second place within your field, and your front-runner can't even string a sentence together, let alone a paragraph. Kamala drops out now. We've got to do a little analysis, a little prediction. She did have 3 or 4 points of support in most of the polls. It's not like that's inconsequential within a field this packed. Where does that support probably go? I can't even fucking begin to tell you, and I'll tell you why. Because she was uniquely the square peg in a round hole candidate, she has a little bit of overlap and a lot of non-overlap with pretty much everybody else in the field. My gut instinct tells me some of her voters are Yas, Queen Slay, strong, empowered female voters. They probably go to Warren. That gives her a couple points and probably just draws her even with Sanders, so I don't think that this makes a big difference in the race. She arguably still would be in third. At the most, she's running alongside Sanders or a point ahead. She's way behind Biden by, 8 or 9 points. It's a considerable gap. For California, where she never even was in the top 3 for the most part, even though it's her own state, also there, I don't know. I mean, it might come down to who she endorses, actually. That may end up being a little bit of extra flux. We might look at more malleability within the polls for some of these individuals, simply because those voters will be going from camp to camp randomly trying to find who to back. Go and monitor Kamala Harris's Twitter and see what her diehard fans that are all grieving right now, see what they say about who they should back now that Kamala is out. I think some of the ideological ones, I mean, her voters really seem to be man-haters, so I can't imagine Biden, Sanders, or Buttigieg really grab it. Maybe they'll go to the down-ballot individuals. It won't be Gabbard, that's for sure. Maybe Yang. Yang in 5th place all of a sudden. By the way, I believe because of this, Bloomberg pulling into maybe the top 5 in the future as well. Andrew Yang in the top 5 in the also-ran circle outside of the bottom half. Oh my God. Yeah. Again, the Dems are perfectly sane. It's reasonable for your front-runner to be 76 and have dementia. 2nd place is a socialist who's pushing 80 years old. 3rd place is someone who lied about their ethnicity to make their campaign, pretends to be grassroots, everyone's beginning to see through it. Former media darling now dumped upon by the same allies she once wined and dined. 4th place is a dude who's not even 40, he's still fresh and wet behind the ears, and all he's been is a mayor of South Bend. Most people can't find it on a map. Kamala drops out. That leaves you, again, arguably Michael Bloomberg or Andrew Yang is now in the top 5 of the field. Yang, communism light UBI Yang, or Bloomberg, Mr. Stop and Frisk and guns are terrible and everything wrong with society. What wonderful campaigns you have in the Democratic field. I can't wait for the next polling aggregate cycle to come through. It's going to take a couple of weeks. We'll probably see some statistical movement as Kamala's voters, again, it is fairly substantial. She was in 5th place, even though it's distant, she was never going to win. She did have supporters. Some of them were very hardened. Some of these people may literally sit it out and say, well, the DNC decided to cheat her out of the nomination. It should have been her. It should have been Kamala Harris. The rest of them are either too old or too young, or they're white males. Some of these people are very hateful. It's going to be very interesting to see where they go. Again, I mean, I'm scratching my head. I'm not entirely sure who these people are supposed to back. It could be, I mean, again, gut instinct tells me Warren gobbles some of it up, but I can't believe that every Kamala voter is a third wave or radfem. It just doesn't make any sense. Some of these people looked at it and said she had a sane platform, which, by the way, shows you the compulsive insanity within the Democratic field. Some people think Biden is capable of beating Trump. My goodness, how wrong people can be. That's about all. Peace out.